The village woke before the sun had fully climbed into the sky. Thin lines of smoke rose from cooking fires, and the smell of fresh bread, roasted corn, and warm spices drifted through the cool morning air. Children chased each other between small mud houses with thatched roofs, laughing as chickens hurried out of their way. Women balanced woven baskets on their heads, while men prepared carts filled with vegetables, carved wood, and handmade cloth. Every week, the village came alive on market day. People traveled from nearby villages to buy, sell, and share stories. Bright fabrics fluttered in the gentle breeze. Drums echoed across the open square, joined by cheerful songs that made even tired travelers smile. Goats bleated, babies cried, merchants called out their prices, and friends greeted one another with warm embraces. It was the happiest day of the week. In this village, everyone knew everyone. They knew who had planted the best crops, whose daughter had just married, which family had welcomed a new baby, and who needed help repairing a roof after the last heavy rain. But among all the familiar faces, there was one child everyone noticed for a different reason. His name was Keto. He was about 13 years old, tall for his age, with dark eyes that always seemed to be searching for something far away. His clothes were clean but worn from years of use. He walked quietly, keeping his eyes lowered, never asking anyone for anything. The strange thing about Keto was not the way he looked. It was the silence. No one could remember hearing his voice. Not the elders. Not the teachers. Not even the children who had grown up beside him. Some said he had spoken as a very small child before a terrible tragedy changed everything. Others believed he had been born without the ability to speak. Since no one truly knew the answer, stories filled the empty space where the truth should have been. Rumors spread faster than the wind. "He is cursed," some whispered. A spirit took his voice, others quietly claimed. "There is sadness living inside that boy," the older women often said with pity in their eyes. The younger children were curious. They sometimes followed him from a distance, hoping they might be the first to hear him speak. But Keto never did. Not a single word. When someone greeted him, he simply smiled politely or nodded his head. When someone asked him a question, he answered with gentle hand movements or quiet expressions. It was as if silence had become part of who he was. Still, not everyone treated him kindly. Some villagers avoided walking too close to him. They crossed the road when they saw him coming. A few mothers pulled their children closer whenever he passed by. "Stay away," they warned softly. "We don't know what follows that boy." Others thought differently. "There is nothing dangerous about him," an old fisherman often said. "I have seen pain in those eyes, not evil." The village could never agree. They feared what they did not understand. Keto never argued. He simply continued walking through life with the same calm face, carrying a sadness much older than his years. He lived at the edge of the village with his elderly grandmother, Mama Nima. Their small home stood beneath a large baobab tree that had watched over generations of families. Life was simple there. Every morning, Keto fetched water from the river, gathered firewood, and cared for the small vegetable garden behind their house. His grandmother loved him deeply. Although age had bent her back and slowed her steps, her heart remained strong. She had raised Keto ever since his parents disappeared many years ago. His mother had died from a sudden illness. His father had vanished shortly afterward under mysterious circumstances. No one knew exactly what had happened. Some believed he had abandoned his family. Others believed he had died somewhere far from home. Mama Nima never spoke about those painful days. Whenever Keto looked at the old family photographs inside their small house, she quietly wiped away her tears and changed the subject. The past remained locked away like an unopened door. As the afternoon sun climbed higher, the village market grew louder than ever. Buyers bargained over baskets of fruit. Musicians played joyful rhythms while dancers entertained laughing crowds. It seemed impossible for anything to disturb such a lively day. Then everything changed. A figure appeared at the entrance of the market. It was Keto. But today, something was different. He wasn't empty-handed. Carefully held against his chest was an old wooden box, wrapped tightly in faded brown cloth. The box looked ancient, its corners worn smooth by time, as though it had traveled through many years waiting for this very moment. Keto walked slowly through the crowded market without saying a word. The laughter faded. The music stopped. One by one, merchants lowered their goods. Conversations ended in mid-sentence. Every pair of eyes turned toward the silent boy. No one knew what was inside the mysterious box. But somehow, everyone felt that nothing in the village would ever be the same again. The market that had been filled with music only moments before now stood in complete silence. Every eye followed Quito. The boy continued walking through the center of the marketplace with slow, steady steps. He held the old wooden box tightly against his chest as if it were the most precious thing he had ever owned. The faded cloth wrapped around it fluttered gently in the warm afternoon breeze. No one dared move. Even the drummers lowered their hands. The merchants forgot about their customers. Children stopped laughing. It was as if time itself had paused. A woman selling baskets leaned toward the fruit seller beside her and whispered, "What is he carrying?" The fruit seller shook his head. "I have never seen that box before." Within seconds, whispers spread through the crowd like dry leaves carried by the wind. "Maybe it's filled with gold." "No, it must be something much older. I heard his father disappeared with a treasure years ago." Another man frowned. "Treasure? Don't be foolish. Look at that cloth. That box is ancient." The rumors grew louder with every passing moment. An elderly hunter rubbed his grey beard thoughtfully. "My grandfather once told me stories about boxes like that," he said quietly. "Some were used by tribal guardians to protect powerful secrets." A nearby woman gasped, "You mean magic?" The old hunter nodded slowly. "Perhaps." Another voice quickly interrupted. "Or perhaps it carries a curse." Those words spread even faster. A curse. I knew something was strange about that boy. Maybe that's why he cannot speak. I told you all these years that something followed him. Several mothers quickly pulled their children closer. "Stay back. Don't go near him." But children are often more curious than they are afraid. As the adults argued among themselves, 5 young boys quietly slipped behind a row of market stalls. A little girl joined them, carefully peeking around baskets filled with yams. "Let's follow him," one boy whispered. "What if he opens the box? I want to see what's inside." Keeping a safe distance, they secretly followed Quito as he walked deeper into the crowded market square. Quito noticed them. He noticed everyone. The fearful eyes. The curious faces. The whispers that seemed to follow every step he took. But he never looked angry. He never looked frightened. He simply continued walking with calm determination. Inside his heart, memories stirred like waves beneath a quiet river. His father's gentle hands. His grandmother's warning eyes. The promise he had protected for so many years. He tightened his grip on the wooden box. Not yet, he silently told himself. Not yet. Near the center of the market, several village elders gathered beneath the shade of a large acacia tree. Their weathered faces showed both wisdom and concern. One elder spoke so softly that only those standing close could hear. "Do you remember the old legend?" Another slowly nodded. "The one about the keeper's box?" "Yes." They exchanged uneasy glances. The oldest among them closed his eyes for a moment before speaking. "Our ancestors believed that certain families were trusted with sacred objects. Those objects were never opened until the right time." Another elder frowned. "I thought those stories had disappeared long ago." "So did I." Silence settled between them. Across the market, the village chief stood outside his meeting shelter, watching everything carefully. Chief Jabbery was respected because he never rushed to judgment. While others whispered with fear, he simply observed. His sharp eyes remained fixed on Quito. The chief noticed something that others did not. The boy was not wandering. He was walking toward a destination. Every step seemed planned. Every movement carried purpose. Chief Jabbery folded his arms. "This is no accident," he murmured to himself. "That boy came here for a reason." At the edge of the village, Mama Nima was returning from the river with a clay water pot balanced on her head. She smiled as she thought about Quito preparing the evening meal. But as she neared their small home, her smile faded. The house was empty. The old wooden shelf stood open. The cloth that had always covered one special object was gone. Her heart nearly stopped. No. The water pot slipped from her hands and shattered against the ground. She stared at the broken pieces without even noticing them. Her hands began to shake. He took it. Fear filled her eyes. For all these years. She whispered a prayer under her breath before gathering her dress and hurrying toward the marketplace as fast as her aging legs could carry her. Back in the market, the crowd had doubled. People from nearby farms had arrived after hearing that something unusual was happening. No one was buying or selling anymore. The mysterious box had become the center of everyone's attention. Some believed it held forgotten riches. Others believed it contained powerful tribal magic. Many feared it carried a terrible curse. A few quietly wondered if it was a sacred family relic that had been hidden for generations. No one knew the truth. Everyone believed something different. Finally, a bold merchant stepped forward. "Keto," he called gently. The silent boy stopped walking. The merchant pointed toward the box. "What is inside?" Keto looked into the man's eyes. He said nothing. Another villager spoke. "Where did you get it?" No answer. An old woman stepped closer. "Does it belong to your father?" Still nothing. The silence became heavier than any spoken word. Each unanswered question only deepened the mystery. The whispers grew louder. The fear spread wider. Even those who had laughed at the rumors only minutes before now found themselves wondering if the stories were true. At last, Keto reached the very center of the market. Without speaking, he slowly lowered the old wooden box onto the dusty ground. He rested both hands gently on its worn lid. The crowd instinctively took a step backward. No one breathed. No one moved. And from somewhere beyond the gathering crowd came the trembling voice of an old woman. "Keto, don't." It was Mama Nima. She had finally arrived. Mama Nima pushed her way through the crowd, breathing hard. Her hands trembled as she looked at the old wooden box resting in the center of the market. "Keto." She whispered again. The boy turned toward her. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The crowd watched in complete silence. The faded cloth still covered the box. Years of dust clung to its rough wooden surface. Small scratches marked its corners, showing that it had traveled through many seasons. Yet despite its age, the box remained tightly sealed. No one dared step closer. It was as though an invisible line surrounded it. Even those who had shouted the loudest only moments before now kept their distance. Chief Jabri slowly walked forward until he stood a few steps away from Keto. His voice was calm. "My son, no one here wishes to harm you." Keto looked at him quietly. "If this box carries danger, we must know." Still, Keto did not answer. His silence filled the market with even greater uncertainty. The chief studied the boy's face. There was no fear in his eyes. Only determination. That alone made the chief hesitate. Inside Keto's heart, memories began to rise like old songs carried by the wind. He remembered another afternoon many years ago. He had only been 5 years old. Rain had fallen heavily outside their small home while thunder rolled across the dark sky. His father knelt beside him, holding the very same wooden box. "Keto," his father had said gently. The little boy had looked up with wide, trusting eyes. His father placed both hands on the box. "There may come a day when people ask questions." He smiled sadly. "They may accuse us. They may fear us. They may even hate us." Young Keto did not understand. His father gently touched his cheek. "But promise me one thing." The little boy nodded. "Protect this box." His father looked deeply into his eyes. "Never open it. Not until the right day. When that day comes, you will know." Those were among the last words his father ever spoke to him. The very next morning, he disappeared. Some villagers claimed he had run away. Others believed he had stolen something valuable. Many simply stopped speaking about him. Only Mama Nima continued believing that one day the truth would return. From that moment on, Keto guarded the box like a promise made with his own heart. As he grew older, temptation visited him many times. There were nights when he sat alone, staring at the sealed lid. He wondered what was hidden inside. Was it treasure? A family secret? A letter? Answers about his father? More than once, he reached out to lift the lid. But every time, he remembered his father's voice. Not until the right day. So he pulled his hand back. Year after year, the box remained closed. Back in the crowded marketplace, the whispers grew louder again. A tall merchant finally lost his patience. "This has gone on long enough," he declared. "If the boy refuses to explain himself, then someone else should open it. Several villagers quickly agreed. He's right. We deserve to know. What if the box contains something dangerous? Another man stepped forward. What if sickness comes from it? What if it brings bad luck? Fear began spreading faster than reason. But not everyone shared that opinion. An elderly woman raised her walking stick. No. Her voice surprised everyone. The box belongs to the boy. No one has the right to touch it. A farmer nodded in agreement. If his family protected it all these years, perhaps they had a reason. Another elder added quietly, "Our ancestors taught us to respect what we do not understand." Soon the crowd was divided. One side demanded the box be opened immediately. The other insisted it should remain untouched until its owner chose otherwise. Voices rose. Arguments echoed across the marketplace. People pointed fingers. Some accused Keto of hiding the truth. Others defended the quiet boy who had never harmed anyone. The children who had followed him earlier watched with frightened eyes. They had never seen the adults argue like this before. Even the musicians stood silently beside their drums. The joyful market had become a place of fear and suspicion. Chief Jabri lifted both hands. Enough. His strong voice quieted the crowd. This village has always solved its problems with wisdom, not anger. The shouting slowly faded. He turned toward Mama Nima. Mother Nima. You know something about this box. She lowered her eyes. Tears filled them almost instantly. I know only what my son asked me to protect. The villagers leaned closer. Please. The chief said softly, help us understand. Mama Nima shook her head. I cannot. My son trusted Keto. He gave the responsibility to him. Her voice broke. If today is truly the day. She looked at her grandson with both fear and love. Then only Keto can decide. Every eye turned toward the silent boy. He stood perfectly still beside the wooden box. The wind gently lifted the edges of the faded cloth. His hands rested on the old lid. He closed his eyes for a brief moment. Deep inside, he heard his father's voice once more. Asterisk, when that day comes. Asterisk. Asterisk, you will know. Asterisk. Slowly, Keto opened his eyes. For the first time since entering the market, he looked directly at every person gathered before him. Their faces reflected every emotion imaginable. Fear, hope, curiosity, suspicion, regret. The entire village seemed to be holding its breath. Without speaking a single word, Keto reached for the faded cloth covering the wooden box. His fingers slowly wrapped around its edge. And with one careful movement, he began to pull it away. The faded cloth slipped from the wooden box and landed softly on the dusty ground. The old box was now fully visible. Its dark wood was covered with strange carved symbols that had faded over time. Deep lines ran across the lid like the branches of an ancient tree. A thick iron lock held it tightly shut, its surface stained with years of rust. A cold silence spread across the market. No one had ever seen anything like it. The silence lasted only a moment. Then the shouting began. I knew it. One man cried. Look at those markings. That is no ordinary box. It carries dark spirits, another woman shouted as she stepped backward. We should burn it before something terrible happens. Fear rushed through the crowd like a wildfire. Some villagers grabbed their children and hurried away from the center of the market. Others picked up sticks and farming tools, unsure of what they might be facing. One frightened merchant pointed directly at Keto. Ever since that boy was born, strange things have happened. The drought. The sickness. The deaths. Maybe this is the reason. His words hung heavily in the air. Several frightened villagers slowly nodded. I remember the drought. So do I. My crops failed that year. My husband became sick. The old healer died. One accusation quickly became many. People who had once ignored Keto now looked at him with open fear. He brought bad luck. He always has. We should send him away before it's too late. Keto stood beside the box without moving. The harsh words cut deeply into his heart. He wanted to defend himself. He wanted to tell them they were wrong. But the promise of silence he had carried for so many years still held him firmly. He lowered his eyes. Not because he was ashamed. Because he refused to answer anger with anger. Suddenly another voice rose above the shouting. Enough! It was the old fisherman who had always shown kindness to Quito. He stepped forward, leaning on his weathered walking stick. You speak of curses, he said firmly. But tell me this. When has this boy ever harmed anyone? The crowd became quieter. He has carried water for the sick. He has repaired broken fences. He has helped widows gather firewood. Did any of you thank him? No one answered. The fisherman looked around the crowd. You fear silence because you do not understand it. Several villagers lowered their heads, but others refused to change their minds. A young hunter folded his arms. Kindness does not erase danger. If that box hides something evil, we cannot ignore it. An elderly woman stepped beside the fisherman. Our ancestors taught us never to judge without truth. She pointed toward the wooden box. Perhaps that box carries answers. Another villager quickly replied, or death. The argument grew louder again. The market became divided into two groups. One side believed Quito had brought danger into the village. The other believed he deserved trust and respect. Families argued with neighbors. Friends disagreed with lifelong friends. The joyful marketplace had become a battlefield of words. As voices echoed across the square, one of the oldest elders slowly stood beneath the acacia tree. His face was covered with deep wrinkles earned through many years of wisdom. I remember a story, he said quietly. People gradually fell silent. My grandfather spoke of certain families chosen to protect sacred objects. He looked toward the wooden box. They were never treasures. They were never weapons. They carried truth. Someone interrupted him. And what if the truth is dangerous? The elder sighed. The truth is only dangerous to those who fear it. His words settled over the crowd like falling rain. Even so, uncertainty remained. Old legends filled everyone's thoughts. Stories of hidden guardians, ancient promises, forgotten secrets. Some believed those stories were nothing more than fairy tales. Others suddenly wondered if they had been true all along. Chief Jabri stepped into the middle of the crowd. His strong voice echoed across the marketplace. Everyone will remain calm. The authority in his voice silenced even the loudest arguments. No one will touch the box. No one will harm this boy. And no one will act out of fear. His eyes moved across the restless villagers. Fear has blinded many people before. It will not blind this village today. At that very moment, Mama Nima finally reached the center of the market. She was exhausted. Her breathing was uneven after running farther than her old body could manage. When she saw the uncovered wooden box, her face turned pale. Her hands immediately covered her mouth. Tears filled her eyes. For a long moment, she could not speak. The chief gently approached her. Mother Nima. You know this box. She slowly nodded. Yes. The crowd leaned closer. Hope and curiosity filled every face. Then tell us, one villager pleaded. What is inside? Why did Quito bring it here? Another voice quickly followed. What secret have you hidden from us all these years? Mama Nima looked at the people she had lived beside for decades. Many had once been her friends. Many had comforted her after losing her daughter. Others had turned their backs on her family after her son's disappearance. She closed her eyes. Pain washed over her face. I cannot tell you. A loud murmur swept through the crowd. You must. We deserve answers. You owe this village the truth. Mama Nima slowly shook her head. My son gave his trust to Quito. My promise belongs to him. Her voice trembled. There are some promises that cannot be broken, no matter how heavy they become. The crowd grew restless once again. Some demanded that the chief force the box open. Others begged him to protect Quito. Fear wrestled with curiosity. Hope battled suspicion. No one knew which side would win. Chief Jabri turned toward the silent boy. Quito stood beside the ancient box, calm despite the storm surrounding him. The chief searched the boy's eyes. For the first time, he realized something important. Quito was not protecting the box because he feared what was inside. He was protecting it because he believed the time had finally come. A warm breeze swept across the marketplace. Dust swirled around the wooden box. The iron lock caught the afternoon sunlight and flashed brightly for a single moment. Every heartbeat seemed louder than the last. The entire village waited. Something hidden for many years was about to change all of their lives forever. The entire marketplace stood frozen. No one spoke. No one even seemed to breathe. The warm afternoon wind swept across the square, lifting small clouds of dust around the old wooden box. Quito remained kneeling beside it, his hands resting gently on the rusted iron lock. His heart pounded inside his chest. For years, he had waited for this moment. For years, he had protected the promise his father had placed in his hands. Now, every eye in the village was fixed on him. Chief Jabri gave a slow nod. "The choice is yours, Quito." The boy looked at his grandmother. Mama Nima's eyes were filled with tears. She was frightened, but she also gave him a small, gentle nod. It was the same look she had given him every time he had asked about the box. The time has come. Quito closed his eyes for a brief moment. In his mind, he heard his father's voice once again. Asterisk, when the right day comes, the truth will no longer belong to us alone. Asterisk. Taking a deep breath, Quito reached for the old iron key hanging from a leather cord around his neck. Many villagers gasped. None of them had ever noticed the small key before. With trembling fingers, he placed it into the ancient lock. The metal creaked loudly. The sound echoed across the silent marketplace. Slowly, the lock opened. Quito lifted it away and carefully placed it beside the box. For one final moment, he rested both hands on the wooden lid. Then, with great care, he slowly raised it. The hinges groaned after years of remaining closed. Every villager leaned forward. Some expected gold. Others expected dark magic. Some silently prayed they would not see anything at all. But inside the box, there was no treasure, no glowing object, no curse, no magic, only the quiet remains of one family's life. Neatly arranged inside lay a bundle of old letters tied together with faded blue string. Beside them rested several worn family photographs whose edges had turned yellow with age. A thick leather journal sat beneath the letters, its cover cracked from years of use. Near the corner of the box lay a beautiful handmade necklace woven from colorful beads and tiny carved pieces of wood. Folded carefully beneath everything else rested an old village map. The crowd stared in confusion. "That's all," someone whispered. "It's only paper." Another villager frowned. "I don't understand." Chief Jabri slowly knelt beside Quito. "May I?" Quito looked into the chief's eyes. Then, without speaking, he gently nodded. The chief carefully lifted the worn journal from the box. Dust drifted into the air as he opened the first page. Beautiful handwriting filled every line. At the top of the page were simple words. Asterisk, if you are reading this, then the day I prayed for has finally arrived. Asterisk. The marketplace became even quieter. Chief Jabri continued reading aloud. Asterisk, my name is Baraka. Asterisk. Asterisk, I am Quito's father. Asterisk. A wave of surprise passed through the crowd. People looked at one another in disbelief. The chief continued. Asterisk, many believe I abandoned my family. Asterisk. Asterisk, many believe I disappeared because I was selfish. Asterisk. Asterisk, the truth is far more painful. Asterisk. Mama Nima lowered her head and quietly began to cry. The chief's voice grew heavier as he turned the next page. Years earlier, strangers had arrived near the village. They had discovered that valuable land surrounded the community. Hidden beneath the rich soil were rare minerals and fertile fields that could make dishonest men very wealthy. Those outsiders wanted complete control. But there was one problem. The land legally belonged to the villagers. Unable to claim it honestly, the criminals created lies. They bribed officials. They forged false papers. They threatened anyone who stood against them. Baraka had uncovered their plan by accident while working as a guide for traveling merchants. Once he learned the truth, he secretly began collecting evidence. Every meeting, every false document, every hidden agreement. He copied everything into the journal. The old letters inside the box came from honest officials who had quietly helped him gather proof. The village map marked every piece of land the criminals had hoped to steal. The photographs showed the faces of the men responsible. Chief Jabri carefully held up one of the faded pictures. Several elderly villagers gasped. I remember him. He came here many years ago. He offered to buy our farms. Another elder nodded slowly. We refused. The chief continued reading. Asterisk, they discovered what I knew. Asterisk. Asterisk, they gave me one choice. Asterisk. Asterisk, leave forever. Asterisk. Asterisk, or watch my family suffer. Asterisk. Tears rolled down Mama Nima's face. She covered her mouth to stop herself from crying aloud. The chief's own voice began to tremble. Asterisk, I chose to disappear. Asterisk. Asterisk, I wanted them to believe I had abandoned everything. Asterisk. Asterisk, if they kept searching for me, my wife, my son, and my mother would never be safe. Asterisk. The entire marketplace stood in complete silence. Every person felt the weight of those words. Baraka had never abandoned his family. He had sacrificed everything to protect them. He had carried the burden alone. He had accepted being remembered as a coward, instead of risking the lives of those he loved. The chief slowly turned another page. Asterisk, one day my son will bring this box into the light. Asterisk. Asterisk, when he does. Asterisk. Asterisk, please do not judge him for my silence. Asterisk. Asterisk, judge me only after you know the whole truth. Asterisk. No one moved. No one spoke. The letters, the journal, the photographs, and the map all told the same story. Together, they proved that Baraka had never betrayed his village. He had saved it. His disappearance had not been an act of selfishness. It had been an act of courage. The evidence was impossible to deny. The forged documents exposed the criminals. The letters confirmed Baraka's honesty. The map protected the villagers' rightful land. The photographs identified every man involved. For years, the truth had been waiting inside one small wooden box. Across the crowd, tears filled many eyes. The old fisherman bowed his head. I judged an innocent man. The basket seller wiped her face. I believed the rumors. One of the merchants who had called Quito cursed looked at the ground in shame. I was wrong. Even the children became quiet. For the first time, they understood why Quito had guarded the box with such care. He had not been protecting treasure. He had been protecting the truth. Mama Nima slowly walked to her grandson. She knelt beside him and wrapped her trembling arms around his shoulders. Neither of them spoke. They did not need to. Their tears spoke for them. As the sun began to sink behind the distant hills, its golden light fell across the open box. The secrets hidden for so many years had finally been revealed. But one question still remained unanswered. What would the village do now that it finally knew the truth? The market remained silent long after the journal was opened. No one returned to buying or selling. The drums remained still. The merchants stood behind their tables without speaking. Even the children stayed close to their parents, sensing that they were witnessing a moment that would be remembered for generations. Chief Jabri carefully held Baraka's worn journal in both hands. Its pages were old and fragile, but the words inside were stronger than anyone had imagined. He looked around the crowd before speaking. Today, he said quietly, we will hear the rest of this story. Every villager listened. The chief turned another page and continued reading aloud. Asterisk, I do not know if I will ever return home. Asterisk. Asterisk, but if these pages survive, let them protect the people I love. Asterisk. Asterisk, do not let lies become stronger than the truth. Asterisk. A deep sadness settled over the marketplace. Many villagers lowered their heads. The words were simple, yet they carried years of pain. The chief continued. Baraka had spent months secretly gathering proof against the criminals. He had hidden copies of land records. He had written down the names of every dishonest official who accepted money. He had drawn maps showing the true borders of the village's farmland. He had even recorded the dates of secret meetings held far from the village. Every page showed patience, courage, and sacrifice. He had risked everything without asking for praise. Chief Jabri slowly closed the journal for a moment. He looked at the faces around him. We believed a lie. No one argued. No one could. The truth was lying open before them. An elderly farmer stepped forward. His eyes were filled with regret. I remember the day Baraka disappeared. I told everyone he had run away. His voice broke. I never stopped to ask if there was another explanation. Another woman quietly wiped tears from her face. I stopped visiting Mama Nima. I thought her family had brought shame upon the village. She looked toward the old grandmother. I was wrong. One after another, painful memories returned. A shopkeeper remembered refusing to sell food to Mama Nima when money was scarce. A neighbor remembered crossing the road instead of greeting Quito. Another villager remembered warning his children never to play with the silent boy. Each memory felt heavier than the one before. The rumors they had believed had become wounds carried by an innocent family. Mama Nima stood quietly beside her grandson. She did not accuse anyone. She did not remind them of the lonely years. But the sadness in her eyes said everything. For years she had buried her grief beneath quiet strength. She had watched neighbors turn away. She had watched Quito grow up alone. Still, she had never spoken with hatred. She had simply waited for the truth. Chief Jabri carefully unfolded the old village map from inside the box. The paper was faded, but the markings were still clear. He spread it across a large wooden table so everyone could see. The villagers slowly gathered around. At first, it looked like an ordinary map. Then the chief pointed to several red lines drawn across the land. These marks were made by Baraka, he explained. They show the true borders of our farmland. The oldest farmers looked closer. One of them suddenly gasped. This land. He pointed toward a wide green valley near the river. It belongs to us. Another elder nodded. My grandfather farmed there. I had forgotten. Chief Jabri turned to one of the letters found inside the box. The letter came from a government land officer who had secretly helped Baraka. It confirmed that the valley had always belonged to the village. The papers used by the outsiders to claim it had been forged. A wave of surprise swept through the crowd. So they lied. They planned to steal everything. They almost succeeded. Chief Jabri nodded. They would have. But Baraka gathered proof before they could finish their plan. He carefully placed the forged documents beside the real records. The differences were easy to see. False signatures, changed boundaries, missing official seals. There could no longer be any doubt. The evidence inside the wooden box protected not only Baraka's name but also the future of the entire village. Without those documents, the farmland might have been lost forever. The fertile valley that had fed generations of families would have belonged to strangers. Children yet to be born would have grown up without knowing it had once been theirs. The crowd slowly began to understand the full weight of Baraka's sacrifice. He had not saved one family. He had saved every family. The old fisherman stepped toward the center of the market. He removed his hat and held it against his chest. I called Baraka my friend. His eyes filled with tears. But when the rumors began, I stayed silent. He looked at Mama Nima. Silence can hurt just as much as lies. His words reached deep into every heart. One by one, villagers lowered their heads. Some cried openly. Others simply stood in quiet shame. The people who had once feared Quito now looked at him differently. They no longer saw a cursed boy. They saw the son of a brave man. A child who had carried an impossible burden without complaint. For years he had protected the truth alone. Chief Jabri walked toward Quito. He placed one hand gently on the boy's shoulder. Your father gave up his good name so that we could keep our homes. He looked around at everyone gathered. Few people possess such courage. The chief then raised the worn journal high enough for everyone to see. From this day forward, he declared, no one in this village will remember Baraka as the man who abandoned us. A gentle breeze swept through the marketplace. The sunlight broke through the clouds, shining across the open journal, and the old map spread across the table. It felt as though the village itself had been waiting for this moment. The lies that had lived for years were finally losing their power. The truth had returned home. And with it came something the village had not felt in a very long time. Hope. The marketplace stood wrapped in a silence unlike any it had ever known. Only moments earlier, it had been filled with arguments, fear, and painful memories. Now, there was only truth. The open wooden box rested in the center of the square. Its precious contents spread carefully across the table beside it. The old journal, faded photographs, worn letters, and ancient map had changed the hearts of an entire village. Many villagers quietly wiped tears from their faces. Some stared at the ground, unable to lift their eyes. Others looked at Quito with a kindness they had never shown him before. Chief Jabri stepped back from the table. The people slowly formed a circle around Quito and Mama Nima. No one spoke. No one wanted to disturb the moment. Mama Nima gently held her grandson's hand. Her fingers trembled. She looked at him with both pride and sadness. For years, she had watched him carry a burden that no child should ever have to bear. He had protected his father's promise without a single complaint. He had endured whispers, loneliness, and cruel judgment. Yet he had never answered hatred with hatred. The old woman squeezed his hand softly. Her eyes filled with fresh tears. "You have done well," she whispered. "You kept your promise." Quito looked at the faces surrounding him. The same people who had once feared him now looked at him with regret. Some quietly mouthed the words, "I'm sorry." Others simply lowered their heads. The silence grew heavier. For years, Quito had hidden not only the truth but also his own voice. He had chosen silence because his father had asked him to protect something greater than himself. But now, the promise had been fulfilled. The truth had finally been revealed. Quito slowly stepped forward. Every eye followed him. His breathing was calm, but his heart raced faster than ever before. He looked toward the sky for a brief moment, as if searching for his father beyond the clouds. Then he lowered his eyes to the villagers. His lips parted. For the first time in many years, he spoke, "My father." His voice was soft, gentle, almost fragile. Several people gasped. A woman covered her mouth in shock. A small child whispered, "He can talk." The entire marketplace became completely still. Quito continued, "My father told me to wait." His words came slowly, but each one carried the weight of many years. He said, "One day the village would be ready to hear the truth." A tear rolled down his cheek. He told me not to hate anyone. He told me that fear can make good people believe bad things. The villagers listened without moving. Every sentence touched their hearts. He said, "When the right day comes, the truth will heal more people than anger ever could." Quito looked around the crowd. "I waited. I protected the box. I protected his promise." His voice shook for the first time. "Not because I was brave, but because he believed you would one day understand." No one could hold back their tears any longer. The old fisherman openly wept. The merchant who had once accused Quito of bringing bad luck covered his face with both hands. Several mothers hugged their children tightly. Even the strongest men in the village wiped tears from their eyes. Mama Nima broke down completely. She wrapped her arms around Quito and cried against his shoulder. For years, she had dreamed of hearing his voice again. She had prayed through lonely nights that this moment would come. Now, at last, it had. "My grandson." She whispered through her tears, "Your father would be so proud of you." Quito gently embraced her. Neither of them spoke again. They did not need more words. Everything that mattered had already been said. Chief Jabri slowly stepped forward. He looked around the marketplace. Every villager stood in respectful silence. The fear that had once divided them had disappeared. In its place stood understanding, compassion, and hope. As the evening sun bathed the village in golden light, Quito's first words echoed in every heart. The silent boy who had carried a promise for so many years had finally spoken. And in that single moment, an entire village found its voice as well. The days that followed changed the village forever. The whispers that had once followed Quito wherever he walked were replaced with warm greetings and gentle smiles. People who had avoided him for years now stopped to shake his hand. Children who had been told to stay away now ran beside him, laughing as they walked through the village paths. One by one, the villagers came to Mama Nima's small home beneath the old baobab tree. Some brought fresh fruit. Others carried baskets of grain, blankets, or flowers. But the greatest gift they brought was something that could not be held in their hands. It was an honest apology. The basket seller lowered her head and said, "Please forgive us. We believed rumors instead of searching for the truth." The merchant who had once called Quito cursed wiped tears from his eyes. "I judged your family without knowing your story. I am deeply sorry." Mama Nima listened to every apology with quiet grace. She smiled gently and replied, A heart that admits its mistakes is already beginning to heal. Quito stood beside her, his voice no longer hidden by silence. "I forgive you," he said simply. Those words lifted a heavy burden from every heart. A few weeks later, the entire village gathered beneath the largest tree near the marketplace. Together, they built a beautiful stone memorial for Baraka. His name was carved proudly into the smooth rock. Below, it was simple words that everyone could understand. Asterisk asterisk, a man who gave up his own name to protect the future of his people. Asterisk asterisk. Families placed flowers around the memorial. Children listened as the elders told Baraka's true story, not as the tale of a man who disappeared, but as the story of a father whose courage saved an entire community. The forgotten farmland shown on the old map was officially returned to the village. The fertile fields were planted once again. The harvest fed hungry families, helped children attend school, and gave hope to future generations. Every season, the villagers remembered that those fields had been protected by one man's sacrifice and one boy's unwavering promise. As the years passed, Quito grew into a wise and respected young man. People no longer remembered him as the silent boy. They remembered him as the guardian of truth. Whenever disagreements arose, the elders would often say, "Let us seek the truth before we judge." And every child in the village knew why. On quiet evenings, Quito sometimes sat beside his father's memorial with Mama Nima. They watched the sun disappear beyond the distant hills, knowing that the pain of the past had given birth to a brighter future. The old wooden box remained safely preserved, not as a symbol of mystery, but as a reminder that truth is worth protecting, no matter how long it must wait. Because sometimes, the loudest truth comes from those who remain silent the longest. And the greatest strength is not found in anger or fear. It is found in patience, in sacrifice, in forgiveness, and in the hope that, no matter how deeply the truth is buried, it will always find its way into the light.